The movie opens in 1933 as a group of filmmakers board the SS Venture, a small cargo ship headed for a strange place called Skull Island. Producer Carl has hired performer Anne, her co-star Baxter, and playwright Jack, who is secretly in love with Anne. Later that night, Carl explains to Captain Hayes, Engelhorn, and their trainee Jimmy that his plan is to reach Skull Island, film it, and show it to the world. Engelhorn recalls stories about the island, giant walls, mysterious creatures, but Carl brushes it off and walks away. Soon after, their ship sails into a thick, eerie fog. Hayes slows the boat, but disaster strikes. The ship crashes into rocks, damaged beyond control. With the island in sight, Carl insists on going ashore with his main film crew in a small boat. Engelhorn, unimpressed, lets them go, saying he won't wait long. Carl's crew explores the island entrance and stumbles upon dozens of human skulls. Inside the towering walls, they find deserted ruins. Carl claims no one has lived there for over a century, but Preston, his assistant, feels something is off. As they press on, a young girl covered in black paint appears. Carl approaches, offering her chocolate. Instead, she bites his hand, revealing there are indeed natives on the island. Moments later, the crew is ambushed. Mike is stabbed in the back, another crewman is killed brutally, and is dragged toward an old woman preparing her for a ritual sacrifice. Jack is knocked out, and Carl nearly killed, until Engelhorn, Hayes, and others arrive just in time to drive the natives off with gunfire. Back aboard the ship, Engelhorn insists on lightening the load, tossing cargo overboard. Meanwhile, Carl discusses with cameraman Herb how he will give Mike's share to his family. What they don't know is that one of the natives has secretly boarded with a pole vaulting stick. He kidnaps, and during the night, unnoticed until Jack discovers signs of the intrusion. Realizing Anne is missing, he urges the crew to turn back. On the island, the natives chant calm, 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 as Anne is bound in bones and lowered behind the wall. Suddenly, a 25-foot-tall ape bursts from the jungle, seizing Anne. Before the crew can intervene, Kong vanishes into the forest with her. Carl watches, his mind set more on filming the beast than saving Anne. Determined to rescue her, the crew enters the island wilderness, only to face horrors beyond imagination. A massive horned creature ambushes them, goring and tossing men to their deaths. Jack narrowly escapes while the others unleash gunfire until it collapses. Carl and Herb, hidden nearby, capture the chaos on film. Meanwhile, Anne struggles in Kong's grasp. At first, she screams as he eyes her hungrily, but her beauty stays his hand. Surrounded by skeletons with bone collars, Anne rips hers off and stabs Kong's hand. He drops her, but quickly recaptures her, leaping across hills before the crew can catch up. The search party stumbles upon Anne's collar and countless skeletons. They push deeper, eventually reaching a rocky valley where Jack spots a massive footprint. Carl, obsessed, sneaks off with Baxter to film Brontosaurus's grazing. But danger strikes. Tyrannosaurs attack. The crew soon realizes the massive Brontosaurus herd is stampeding straight toward them, desperately fleeing from a pack of Tyrannosaurs. Now the men are caught in the middle, forced to run for their lives or be trampled to death. The stampede turns deadly. Several crew members are crushed under the Brontosaurus' colossal weight as the ground shakes violently beneath them. Suddenly, multiple Tyrannosaurs burst from the jungle, snarling as they give chase, trying to bring the Brontosaurus down. The crew is caught in the chaos. Baxter hides behind a stone wall, but a Tyrannosaur lunges at him from above. By sheer luck, he scrambles free and flees again. Another Tyrannosaur charges Jack, snapping its jaws, but when it turns toward Carl, Jack reacts instantly, knocking it off balance and sending it to its death. The survivors reach the edge of a steep cliff. Some of the Brontosaurus and crew plunge over the side, vanishing into the abyss. Jimmy pushes himself to keep running, fighting for survival. The sheer weight of the beasts cracks and crumbles the cliffside, sending even more tumbling to their doom. The survivors stumble into a rocky gorge, but the chase continues. One crewman desperately opens fire, riddling a Tyrannosaur with bullets and crippling a Brontosaurus by shooting its leg. The wounded beast crashes into others, causing a massive pileup of collapsing giants. The thunderous impact shakes the ground, nearly crushing several fleeing crewmen. Jack narrowly saves Carl from being smashed in the chaos. The survivors scramble up a steep hill, the Tyrannosaurs snapping at their heels. The slope is too slick for the predators, and the crew just manages to reach the top. But not everyone makes it. Herb, Carl's cameraman, slips behind. A Tyrannosaur seizes him and drags him away to a grisly death. Exhausted, the survivors finally rest and realizes they lost only 4 crewmen. Determined to continue, They decide to build a boat to cross the nearby river. Meanwhile, Baxter and the others make their way back toward the ship. Back in the jungle, Kong watches over and who pretends to be unconscious. The giant gently nudges her, trying to wake her, but she remains still. Eventually, Kong sits patiently, waiting for her. When and finally stirs, she quietly crawls away, hiding behind a rock and preparing to make her escape. But Kong is faster. He steps in front of her, blocking her path. Realizing he doesn't intend to harm her, and changes her approach. She begins to playfully interact with him, testing his reactions, and surprisingly, Kong responds. She dances lightly, trying to charm him, and discovers he has a surprising depth of intelligence and emotion. Kong, delighted, mimics her movements and plays along, his guard lowered. But when and suddenly asks him to stop, Kong misunderstands. His joy turns into anger. In frustration, he pounds the ground and thrashes around, ashamed and thinking he hurt her. Heartbroken, Kong storms off into the forest, leaving him behind in stunned silence. Back with the crew, they manage to build a makeshift raft and attempt to cross a small river. Suddenly, a massive fish-like creature bursts from the water, attacking one of the rafts and throwing men into the river. Jack sinks under the weight of the gear he's carrying, while the beast devours another crewman who tries to swim away. The monster then turns toward Jack, but he manages to slip between two tree branches, narrowly escaping its jaws. On the surface, the creature strikes again, killing yet another man before attacking the second raft. The crew frantically swims for their lives as Carl, ever obsessed, checks his camera and films the horrific scene, even as more of his men are dragged under by the beast. Pressing on, the survivors cross a fallen tree used as a bridge and stumble upon a massive cavern. Hayes investigates while the others wait behind. Inside, he hears a strange sound and opens fire, but Kong suddenly bursts out of the shadows, seizing him in its hand. Hayes tries to shoot, but Kong smashes him against the rocks, killing him instantly. The giant ape then shakes the log bridge violently, sending sailors plummeting to their deaths while a few cling on desperately. And, hearing the commotion in the distance, hurries toward the sound, hoping to reach them. Carl's camera slips from his grasp, dangling uselessly on a branch, as Kong finally topples the log and the surviving sailors into a deep ravine. Meanwhile, and alone, encounters a giant lizard feeding on a carcass. As she quietly retreats, another lizard blocks her path. She flees into a wooden cave, but the predator crashes in after her. Suddenly, a Vastidosaurus rex, a massive tyrannosaur-like beast, drags the lizard away and devours it. And, still trapped, is nearly attacked by a giant millipede but manages to knock it aside and escape. But her relief is short-lived. The Vastidosaurus spots her and gives chase, driving her toward its mountain lair, and slips at the edge of a cliff, clinging to a branch to avoid a deadly fall. The creature loses sight of her and begins to retreat, until another Vastidosaurus emerges from behind. It lunges and then barely dodges, nearly falling. Just as the predator closes in, Kong arrives, slamming into the beast and snatching into safety. A brutal fight begins. Kong battles the ferocious predator when another lunges from behind, then another. Now he faces 3 Vastidosaurs at once, and clings desperately as Kong uses fists, teeth, and sheer strength to keep them at bay. He kills one by hurling it against the rocks, then grabs and with his foot while fighting off the others. In a desperate struggle, he shoves one Tyrannosaur off the cliff, but it drags him down as it falls. Kong hangs on by one arm, clutching and with his foot, while another predator clamps down on him. Unable to hold, Kong and the beasts tumble into the tangled roots of the jungle below. In the chaos, one Vastidosaurus corners and, sliding toward her as she dangles helplessly from a root. Kong smashes the other predator aside and scrambles to intercept, ripping the monster away from, and just in time. She falls, landing on top of one of the beasts. Both plummet into a shallow river below, where the Tyrannosaur rises, stalking, and once more. At that moment, Kong, having killed another of the predators, leaps down into the water, and backs toward him as the Vastidosaurus charges. A savage battle erupts, Kong slamming, tearing, and finally defeating the beast by wrenching its jaws apart in a gruesome display of dominance. Victorious, Kong roars in triumph, the undisputed king of the jungle, and quietly approaches Kong to thank him for saving her, but he turns away, almost embarrassed by her gaze, and runs after him, asking him to stop. Moved, Kong lifts her onto his shoulder, and she clings to him as they leave together. Meanwhile, deep in the ravine, Carl discovers his camera shattered, his footage and hard work destroyed. Suddenly, monstrous insects swarm the survivors. Panic erupts. A giant crab snatches a man, tearing him apart, while another crewman is devoured alive by a massive, worm-like predator with razor teeth. Jack is overwhelmed by swarming creatures until Jimmy, with sharp aim, blasts them off him, saving his life. But then an entire wave of giant crabs emerges, overwhelming the group. Just in time, Englehorn appears above, firing down at the creatures. Baxter descends with a rope, shooting as he goes, helping the survivors escape. Jimmy takes Captain Hayes' cap in mourning, vowing to remember him. Together, the crew climbs out, but Jack refuses to give up on it. Elsewhere, Kong carries into his mountaintop den to entertain him and begins tossing rocks playfully. Kong watches, intrigued. They share a quiet moment, gazing at the sunset, and, moved by his unexpected tenderness, calls him beautiful. Kong gently cradles her in his massive hand. Later, after the survivors escape the ravine, Jack breaks away, determined to rescue, and Carl promises to wait for them at the wall with a crossway rope. But in private, he presses Englehorn, arguing that they should capture Kong. Englehorn, already notorious for catching dangerous beasts, hesitates, but listens. As night falls and rests in Kong's arm, Jack finally reaches the den, moving quietly to avoid disturbing the giant bats roosting nearby, or Kong himself. He whispers Anne's name, waking her gently, and, lying in Kong's open palm, sees him and slowly reaches out. She tries to leave, but Kong wakes abruptly, snatching her away and lashing out at Jack. Jack narrowly dodges as the bats, startled, swarm the cave and attack Kong. In the chaos, Kong drops and Jack rushes to her side, and together they scramble for escape, and leaps onto Jack's back as they climb down the rocky cliff with a rope of tangled roots. The bats attack again, and Kong claws at them, enraged. One bat snatches Jack and Anne, carrying them away as Kong roars in fury, pained at losing her once again. The bat drops them into a shallow river. Drenched but alive, Jack and Anne flee into the woods with Kong crashing after them. They finally reach the mountain's edge, where Carl and the others wait. Carl delays lowering the crossway, scheming to lure Kong closer so they can capture him. Against Carl's wishes, one crewman lowers it anyway, and Jack and Anne cross safely. But Kong charges, leaping over the wall. The waiting crew immediately hurls hooks and ropes, entangling him in nets anchored to boulders. They unleash bottles of chloroform gas, choking him as Anne begs them to stop. Jack tries to pull her away, but Kong's fury grows. He rips free, smashing sailors and dragging men to their deaths. The survivors scatter. Carl, realizing his plan is falling apart, flees. But Kong pursues relentlessly, leaping over hills and crushing anyone in his path. He slaughters 2 sailors firing at him before reaching the shore, where the remaining crew scrambles onto boats. Still, Kong closes in. Carl grabs a toxin bottle while Jimmy opens fire, enraging the beast. Kong smashes one of the boats, the very one carrying Carl, Jimmy, and Jack, his rage unrelenting. Kong turns to stop the next boat, the very one, and is in, but Englehorn grabs a massive harpoon and tries to stop him, but he fires, piercing Kong's leg and slowing him down. As Kong staggers toward the boat, Carl climbs onto a rock and hurls another toxin directly into his face. The beast falters, weakened, and collapses into a deep, unnatural sleep. Carl declares triumphantly that they will take him to New York and present him as Kong, the 8th wonder of the world. Back in New York City, during Christmas, Carl's dream becomes reality. Broadway lights glow with Kong's name as he unveils a massive show. A captivated audience pays to see the chained giant on stage. Jack slips into the crowd, but Carl steals the credit, claiming Baxter was the hero who saved Anne. A chorus of dancers celebrates Baxter in a performance, with Anne's role replaced by an anonymous showgirl. Irritated by the stranger pretending to be Anne, the blinding camera flashes, and the roaring audience, the beast breaks free of his chains. Chaos erupts as Kong smashes the theater, killing some of the crowd while others flee in terror. Spotting Jack, Kong charges after him, then bursts into the snowy streets of New York, searching desperately for Anne. He seizes random women, only to toss them aside when they are not Anne. The streets descend into panic. Kong topples a bus, flips cars, and wrecks everything in his path. Soldiers mobilize, opening fire, hearing the chaos, and rushes out, determined to calm him. Meanwhile, Jack drives a car straight into Kong's path, trying to draw him away. Kong gives chase, demolishing vehicles in his rampage. At last, Kong catches Jack, crushing his car and knocking him out cold. Then, through the smoke and chaos, Kong spots Anne. He softens instantly, gently lifting her into his arms. The two share a tender reunion as he gets subdued by her presence. Kong carries into a snowy park, where he playfully skates across the frozen ice. sliding clumsily but joyfully, showing his childlike side, and laughs, briefly forgetting the danger. But the army finds them. Machine guns open fire, forcing Kong to flee once more. Carrying, and he scales the towering Empire State Building, bullets whizzing past. At the summit, as the sun sets, and whispers to him, "Beautiful." Then 6 Navy biplanes arrive, circling like vultures. Kong gently places in aside for safety before climbing to the very top to face his attackers. The planes swoop in, unleashing gunfire. Kong roars in fury, swatting at them, nearly falling but catching himself each time. He manages to smash one plane out of the sky and cripple another, but the relentless barrage wounds him badly. Below, Jack fights through soldiers and rushes inside the building, desperate to reach in. Meanwhile, and climbs a ladder to Kong, nearly falling when bullets rip past her, but Kong catches her just in time. The planes keep attacking. Kong crushes another aircraft mid-air, but he is weakening fast. Mortally wounded, he gazes at, and one last time, sorrow in his eyes. She climbs to his side, begging the soldiers to stop, caressing his face as he struggles to stay standing. But his strength fails. Cradling, and one final time, Kong loses balance. With and safe, he plunges from the top of the Empire State Building, his massive body crashing lifelessly onto the streets below, and breaks down in heartbreak as Jack reaches her, embracing her on the rooftop. Down on the street, crowds gather, civilians, police, and soldiers staring in awe at the fallen giant. Cameras flash furiously, but Carl steps forward, gazing at the beast he exploited, his voice heavy with regret. "It wasn't the airplanes," he says. "It was beauty killed the beast." The movie ends. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe.